The Woods of Suicides, St. Cloud, Minnesota. Named after the woods of gnarled thorny trees constructed from the bodies of the dead who have committed the greatest sin of suicide in Dante's The Divine Comedy. So aptly named were these mysterious, unusually dark woodlands. My friends and I would usually drive up once a year, walk from 3 p.m. until midnight, and finally set up camp and build a fire. This was late autumn, the time of year where the leafless honey locusts would bear a striking resemblance to those described in The Inferno, with thorns long enough to impale children. Our annual visit to the Forest of Death wasn't just a drunken campfire getaway, but a hopefully triumphant attempt to conjure the Native American spirit of Ravenhoof, a demonic spiritual entity known to stalk these woods around All Hallows Eve through an ancient Chippewa scripture, a powerful entity whom, if worshipped properly, would grace a mortal with an agent of immortality. To be clear, it doesn't mean you won't die, but it does mean that you will never succumb to unnatural death. That if you were, say, shot, or stabbed, or developed cancer, you would survive until very late in life, only to the moment your heart stops beating naturally. However, this night, we haphazardly got drunk first and read the scripture second. Between the guffaws of laughter and drinking and sex, we'd verbalized the scripture in a pattern which I can't remember, but there was something beyond the euphoric first-time coitus that went on between me and Christy Crawford, a crush of mine for the last 4 years, that made this the most memorable night of my life. At some point, everyone passed out, but I was awakened by something in the middle of the night. Somehow, after a drunken blackout for an inordinate amount of time I can't recall, I could hear the whisper of the fire tongues outside of my tent, hissing, loud as 1,000 rattlesnakes. I opened my tent, looked out, and froze in terror. The fire was raging a good 8 feet into the air in the shape of a man. The man made of fire turned to look at me, planting his feet in the burning embers, crossing his arms, and looking down at me. In an echoing sound, he said something to me which did not ring out in our world, but only within my ears.
Walk with me, necromancer.
But I couldn't move. I was terrified, petrified. The man of fire then stepped out of the fire pit and turned toward my best friend Lawrence's tent. No, I whispered. So I stood up and quietly followed him down a path as his flame-fueled body raged. It was a short jaunt to the river, and we both stood at the riverbank. He turned to look at me once more, and said,
Baptism by fire. Are you prepared for purification?
"Yes." Suddenly he dove at me, and I found myself blinded, engulfed in white, hot flames. And so I dove into the water and extinguished myself. As I emerged from the icy water, I found no trace of burns or pain on my body. As a matter of fact, I had a scar across my stomach from when I fell out of a window onto a jagged metal fence and nearly died. That scar had disappeared. The next thing I knew, I woke up with all of my friends standing around me, and the fire was still going. "Took a little swim, did you?" asked Lawrence. "Why would you go to the river and not tell anyone?" Christy asked. I told them I just wanted to take a dip and wash off the mud from earlier. They shrugged it off, and we all went back to sleep. The fire was still burning, but dwindling. On the drive home, they continued to poke and prod me with jokes and asking me if I'd seen Ravenhoof on the trail, and I just shrugged them off, and eventually they forgot about it. I've since mourned the deaths of my parents, my siblings, my children, and my grandchildren. My great-grandchildren are in their late 40s. I'm officially the oldest living person in the United States at 123 years old. I've been in car accidents, one where I was thrown through my windshield and crashed through the back windshield of the car I rear-ended. Not a scratch on me. And as a construction worker, I fell 4 stories onto pavement. I got back up and continued working. I've never been sick, never been hurt, and even at my age, I'm as mentally sharp as a teenager on Adderall. I thought I'd share this somewhere, and all the kids tell me Reddit is the place to do so. People always question me on how I've stayed alive all this time. I tell them it's a good diet and exercise to thank, with a little red wine here and there. In reality, I'm indebted to the great Ravenhoof. But hey, that's just a wives' tale. Nobody would believe such a story, right? Right.